You're listening to another episode of the Anna Vivo podcast. Thank you for your time.
You said.
Pink elephants.
Yeah, I know.
Don't think about them.
So, in Rhode Island, we had a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house, I think. And so we had bunk beds. I don't know who was on the bottom, but I was on the top. And I woke up. I had had a nightmare. I was pushing on the ceiling.
Oh, no.
And Grandma, Joyce, asked, "What's going on?" I said, "If the pink elephant sits on me, then I think it might have been along the lines of, well, if we dunk her and she drowns, obviously she was a witch." I think the idea, which I've forgotten some of the details, was that if the elephant sits on me, then, I must be guilty. Yeah, anyhow, but it was a pink elephant.
What were you watching or listening to or reading prior to bedtime?
Could be Fantasia, Disney.
That's true.
It has been known to
Conjure up
spawn
some
many a nightmare.
for you and particularly Disney's
No,
Fantasia?
not particularly for me,
Okay,
but
okay.
my subconscious, it could be busy.
All right.
So
Well,
what
good.
were we talking
Let's,
about today? Were we
yeah.
talking about football?
Yeah, welcome back. We're
you.
starting on pink elephants apparently. Welcome back to another episode, AnnaVivo.com, here with guest star, one of the favored relatives, my Uncle Mark, all the way from Colorado, Denver, Colorado. He's saying, keep it coming. We're here in the cozy, homely home office recording studio. Candles are burning, lava lamp is bubbling shortly. And would you like to put your feet up?
Negative, cat boy.
All right, then we're off.
All right.
We're going to be talking about finances today, which is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart as someone who finds himself often in situations that prove my unhandiness. It is a joy to me to know that I can do finances, which is one of my few strengths. So anytime people ask me, "Oh, can you come fix this sink for me?" or "Can you come do your own yard work or fix this leaky whatever?" No, I'm sorry. Ask my wife. She will tell you, please don't. But I can help you find a way to pay for it. I can do that, and I enjoy that finances. And a lot of that for me came from you. And one of my earliest recollections was you giving me a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Oh.
Which I then subsequently got the tiny version of Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, which is just the Cliff Notes. And then you had a game that came from that.
Cash Flow 101.
Cash Flow 101, which was a fun game to play because I enjoy playing Monopoly and games like that. But I do. Most people won't play them with me.
Yeah.
Because they're too convoluted. But Cash Flow 101 is like that in that it's a strategy, it's something that makes you think, and there's a purpose and point behind it. But most people won't play that with me.
No one will play it with me.
So where did finances start in your life before we get into the stories? How old were you? Have you always been a finance guy as well and enjoyed that as a passion or a hobby, or you just realized it's an important part of life, or you have that as a model in your own dad growing up?
I think the only part that would have been pre-high schoolish, college ages, that was so long ago before they had paper.
Yeah.
That it's, I don't have notes. The papyrus doesn't last as long as the shards of pottery. My dad and my mom was on board, was always looking for a way to add to the finances, And so they were involved with Amway,
Oh no.
Shackley,
Okay.
and maybe only those two, but I could have blotted some out of my memory. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So I would say, you know, I did have this picture that, oh, you should be always looking for something that adds a little more.
Yeah.
In
Not
fact,
outside of your 9 to 5.
outside of your 9 to 5, outside of the regular amount that you're saving, outside of these bills, and that, you know, whether it's, you know, as a kid, there was at least one summer that I did mow lawns, a couple of lawns. You know, Southern California, it's like, you cut my blade of grass? I'm going to have to grow 2 more. Sorry, I thought you said mow. You know, anyhow, so know that, and you know, I'm not the guy who can remember, oh, on the third play of the game, we threw this play. It was a pass, run, pass option. You know, I was the guy like, okay, that play didn't work. We're going to do a different one, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, we've run plays already? Yeah, a bunch. Well, forget all that. We're in the moment.
Yeah.
So, but the other thing is most of the things I read, it's read to improve, you know, occasionally read for entertainment. But for me, learning to do something, learning more about this. Well, where does this come from?
Sure.
Oh, that comes from, you know, that's the kind of, so who knows, I may have gone to listen to somebody
Yeah.
but the first 2 things I remember, and I don't know which one came first, in the late 70s, which puts it in either high school or college, I read a book by Robert Allen. It was Nothing Down. And the concept basically was using other people's money, buy 10 rentals. At a certain point, there'll be enough equity in 5 of these to cash out the other 5, and you have a lifetime annuity of,
Yeah.
you know, properties that are generating cash flow, which later, much later, with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and specifically, if you look at the cash flow quadrant, he has a little 4-box idea of, you know, we start where we are trading time for money. In my case, digging ditches. And then
What do you mean by digging ditch? Like
Oh.
metaphorically or in real life?
both, metaphorically, you know, I was trading my labor for money.
Oh, okay.
In this
Sure.
case,
Yeah.
you know, my second year of college, at Christmas, I went to work for a guy that was getting ready to pour a foundation, a slab foundation in San Diego. And so I was cleaning out the footers for the concrete foundation.
Okay.
And, you know, so, but the point is, whatever it is, you start at basically earning $20 an hour, you know, by doing some labor.
Sure.
And then the next quadrant related to that, you're still trading time for money, but you have gained a skill like a doctor or computer programmer,
Yeah.
where your time is now more valuable. But if you don't work, you don't eat.
Right.
That would be the bottom line.
The next
So-
quadrant. Yeah.
So, you know, quadrant 1 is up on the upper left, quadrant 2 is on the bottom left. And so the left hand side is money for labor,
Right.
you know. The right hand side is more like, now you are going to leverage something.
Okay.
So the upper right hand quadrant would be leveraging other people, so an employer.
Okay.
So, you know, I had considered construction. And so my thought how that would looking back now, lo these many years, I should have continued in construction, gained extra skills, gotten, electrical and whatever other training I could conceivably pass the test on.
Sure.
And then at a certain point, I would be in the upper right-hand quadrant 3, where I'm hiring 2 guys, to dig out the ditches and finish the concrete.
Right.
And, and then the 4th quadrant, the bottom right, would be when your assets are what you're leveraging. So this would be where Robert Allen's book, you have started with some amount of asset to buy a real estate asset, in this case, single family homes, and you're building a portfolio that you can leverage the credit from the bank, and then, pay these off so these assets are free and clear.
Right.
And then those assets continue to work for you. In fact, richest man in Babylon, it's a parable kind of thing with 10 or 12 scrolls, and each one has a financial concept. And one of them is each of your gold coins is a servant working for you 24/7. However they would say that back in that day.
Yeah.
So it's, Robert Kiyosaki, cash flow quadrant. He helps give a vision of, I don't have to just be an electrician
Right.
all my life. I could have an electrical company,
Right.
now. And I was trying to remember who this was. I don't remember if it was Socrates or Aristotle. They had a saying, know thyself. So actually, it's probably Old English,
Yeah.
since it's in King James. Socrates of
No,
England.
yeah, it was the.
Yes.
You're right. It was one of those old guys. Yeah.
Yeah. And England,
Yeah.
how much older can you be if you've been, come from England? Anyhow, know thyself. And the truth of that is, some people can be great finish carpenters and furniture carpenters and make wonderful stuff, but they can't manage people. And they can't handle that stress, and they can't delegate and then manage the outcome.
Yeah.
And so they will always be down here in the left-hand quadrant, like the brain surgeon.
Yeah.
Wonderful skills, but can't watch other surgeons, do it. I don't know if that's actually true, but
that's
so that's
they're capped at that.
the guy who is in the upper right-hand quadrant of having a construction or furniture company knows I'm getting this guy to do my finish work on this $1 million house for Clay Miller, you know?
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
Yeah.
So there is a balance between this overall way things can work and where you may be gifted, personality-wise, risk-tolerant-wise. So that's all kind of gearing up. The other big thing that I remember, and I have it somewhere in the labyrinth of my non-organization, a single page where I've envisioned what I would want to, the assets I would want to have that I would be able then have freedom. And there's Robert Kiyosaki also has and this may come from the game, I don't remember. What is the definition of financial freedom? When your assets are covering your
liabilities,
your weekly, monthly, daily liabilities.
Yeah.
So if you need $1,000 a month and you have a rental, that's throwing off a little over $1,000 a month, you are financially free.
Right.
to some degree. Now, there there is a misnomer or a misconception. Wait, back up. Beep, beep, beep. There is a oversimplification of the idea of passive income.
Oh yeah.
All
the
passive
time.
income needs management.
Right.
Some much less than others.
Sure.
That's enough for that.
So
So are we done with the introduction?
yeah. So this joy or passion or interest, kind of, you're not sure where it started though. As a young kid, kind of flushed out in the college, late high school, college, as you're digging ditches and working through this. And then it sounds like a lot of it came piecemeal as you're reading and learning, much like you do a lot of your self-taught education anyway. Is I want to learn something, great, I'm going to watch this. I want to learn something, I'm going to read this, and then from that, this now life of passion and
One
interest.
thing and I was late today because I was asking Joyce, Grandma, Mom, how it was with my father,
Yeah.
because I can only think of one time really buying my first car when he said, "Oh, this needs a heater." It was a 1965 Mustang Fastback.
Oh,
Yes.
this is your first car?
This was the baby,
Wow.
white, blue stripe on the hood,
Look at you.
and 3-speed, 289. I think it was a 289. And he says, "Oh," and they wanted 950,
Yeah, 950 whopping bucks.
I know.
Wow.
Well, Jack in the Box was my first job
Yeah.
in high school. And he says, "Oh, this needs a heater core. We don't need the heat very often, but when that windshield gets full, you want to," he says, "you ought to offer him, $50 less, because that's what it'll cost us." And Dad was in cars at that time after he was out of the Navy. So I said to the seller, I said, "Hey, would you take 900 because it needs a heater core?" He says, "I got 4 guys lined up coming to see this in the next hour. I'm not budging an inch."
Sure. Yeah.
Because somebody's going to want this.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be a good thing, because I ended up buying, I hope you all are looking this up, a Fiat 650 Spider, which had a rear engine, 4-cylinder, 2-door, very narrow, slender looking, but smaller than like the Alphas of that time, which was my dad's car. And really fun, because I was just going from home to college, and I think I used like 2 gallons a week. In fact, for a while, I wasn't even sure it was running on all 4 cylinders, but it was fun in Southern California.
So
so it worked out to be
you
okay.
offered less initially on the car. He said
On the Mustang,
He
and
said
the guy
no,
said no,
and you walked. You didn't.
Yeah,
you didn't
we
come back
walked.
up.
No,
Okay.
no.
Yeah. So then you got
No.
this other car.
So I got a car that I could afford.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because a 3-speed in city traffic, a 289,
Yeah.
with a kid driving it. I mean, I could punch the throttle on the Fiat, and I could watch it accelerate on my minute hand.
Yeah.
It was like, anyhow.
Well, this is what, San Diego, right? So
Yeah.
You're,
Yeah,
Where
there
you're-
you go. So.
cool. So
Yeah.
what about him in finances?
So
that was the first time
sorry.
your dad.
So I asked my mom, I said, I can't remember Dad really either offering me advice or asking, "Hey, what are you thinking about for college or for, because I had thought a particular direction, and he was flying off aircraft carriers, off the coast of Vietnam.
Right.
When I was in high school, the end of my And so when that initial, obviously I'm going to be a pilot,
Yeah.
Didn't happen, I don't ever remember thinking, well, I have to have a career and I have to do something, so I'll go drive a ship. It was like Navy. Yeah, Navy is, you fly around in airplanes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you do have.
There are ships.
You have valets who bring the ship
Bring,
close for you to land on.
Pick up my jet, will you?
Yeah, pick up my jet. Here's my my tag.
Yeah. Have it washed and buffed when I return.
So, and I grew up in a Christian home and a very, that I was in the kind of, even though it was Southern California, it was very, this is how God works. You go, you knock on a door. If it doesn't open, you go to another door. That would have been how I would have described, God's leading at the time.
Right.
And so I probably thought, the Navy is closed.
Yeah.
If I can't be a pilot, I'll go be a PE teacher,
Right.
Oh, they don't make any money? Oh, well, then I'll be a wood shop teacher. They make lots of money.
But that was the first time you had heard your dad really, or
That
you can't
was
remember.
the only one that I can remember where he said, he was along beside, he said, well, this is the thing, you don't have to pay full price. He didn't say those words, but you don't have to pay full price for this. And who wants this piece of junk?
Graham didn't mention it today when you were asking her on.
No, I said, this is the only one I don't remember him ever saying, what are you thinking about for what are you going to study at San Diego State? And, and she had a different explanation that was more like, we weren't worried about you because we had to worry about Bev, and Brad and Tom, And
firstborn, right? I got you.
Yeah. I had the wool pulled way over their eyes. Sorry, folks. Way over her eyes,
So you kind of had to learn it all on your own, it sounds like. Or really just stumbled into it.
Okay, sorry. There was a point to that. So I would look out there and I'd say, obviously, this book tells me real estate, and that makes a lot of sense because people still habitually like to live indoors,
Habitually.
Back in that day.
At least
that's maybe not so much now. But I'd look at the stock market and I'd think, IBM. Everybody talks about IBM or, something, But I didn't have, and this was the other half of my question to Mom, Joyce, that, why did I never say, hey, Dad, what do you think about the stock market? Hey, Dad, what do you think about Amway? What do you think about real estate? What do you think about? And I think we mentioned on a previous podcast, my one previous podcast, that, or maybe I'll tell you this as new information. My paternal grandfather had an alcoholism problem. Mm-hmm. And so it's very possible, this is what I reasoned as I consider all these things, that my dad grew up without any counsel, without anyone saying, hey, what are you thinking about this?
Right.
But the flip side of that is my dad, got the idea of flying as this is the exciting thing I want to do from an early stage. So it might have been like, what do you mean, what do I want to do?
I know what I'm doing.
I know what I want to do. I got to get through 2 years of college and I got to get into the Navy.
Getting out of this place.
That is really true.
Yeah.
Yes. They did not want to be part of
no
upstate New York.
As far wait, you said I get to pick my orders?
Yes.
How far can I go?
Can I go to Hawaii? No. How about San Diego?
I'll take that.
I'll take that? Yes, I'll take that.
So you're learning kind of this in hindsight, growing up now on your own and finding it as an interest. Like you said, maybe I'll read this real estate book. I'm reading this book on the stock
I would
market.
read all these things.
Yeah, and this makes sense. This doesn't make sense. I'm going to do this one. And so there's a lot of just self-learning, and then it just made sense. It sounds like, and it became now years later, you're looking back and you're like, I kind of obviously there's things you wish you could have done differently, like we all have, but you don't you don't look back and regret the direction you went into finance and money management and passive income and learning how all of that works.
So there was a long
It's a
period
big
of
loaded
learning.
question.
That's okay. There was a long period of learning from 1979-ish.
Okay.
That's when I graduated from college, to the 2000s,
Yeah.
when I was, just barely keeping my head above water with all the other things going on.
Sure.
And it wasn't really, as Mr. Miyagi would say, when the student is ready to learn, the
Yeah.
teacher will appear.
That's
And
true.
that is kind of what happened.
Right. Right.
In
Y2K. Was that the
no. So out of college, I taught 1 year in industrial arts as a provisional thing. I had always set in my mind I really didn't want to be a teacher, although I am a teacher coach mentality.
Mm-hmm.
That is my leadership style, to coach. And I thought, well, maybe God will call me to the mission field, or I'll be a deacon.
Yeah.
I'll be in business and I'll
Right.
just be in the church or something. And so I took about 2 years off to go to seminary, because I thought, you ought to learn something about the Bible,
Right.
if you're going to be a missionary, maybe. I think I didn't get good enough grades because I didn't get called to the mission field, which... So I did that.
Yeah.
And then someone said, oh, and so I knew I only had enough money for about 1.5 years, and I was killing myself to make it through 2 years and on a 3-year degree. And so I said, I'm going to take some time off and get a job, and we'll just, I'm not sure what comes next. And someone said, oh, the money is in computer programming.
Yeah.
So I, I was working. I went to night school, learned all those things, COBOL, SPL,
Wow.
blah, 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 blah,
Okay.
blah, blah.
Down in San
And
Diego?
no,
Yeah.
I'm up in LA.
Up in LA,
I'm
okay.
up in, yes,
Yeah.
LA area.
Yeah.
And, well, I was in La Mirada.
Okay.
I had gone to the seminary at Biola University, and
Talbot.
yes, Talbot
Yeah.
Seminary. And I stopped that, but I was still in that area, and I went to computer school and night school and got that. And then a friend in the college and career class said, we're looking for a programmer at Biola, in the administration
Yeah.
computer department.
Right.
But you won't need any of those old languages. You're using these languages on the the Hewlett Packard 2000. And so I came and I did this stuff, and I did it a couple years. And so, I was still around my community, my
Mhm.
college and career community. And I was in a really good church. I was enjoying everything about it. But I learned the hard way after 3 years that I wasn't the sit in the cubicle looking at the computer screen thing. I had a great time going out to the accounting department and analyzing, what is it you need this program to do?
Yeah.
Oh, you want a bookstore inventory / point of sale.
Yeah.
Oh, we can do that.
Right,
Sure.
right.
I'll draw the pictures and these guys will make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're the coach, mentor person, big picture
Well,
person. They
big
can
picture
ask
thing.
the right
Yeah.
questions with just
Yes.
enough technical experience behind you
Yeah,
to
say,
translate what
I've-
these people don't know, what they think they need, and then actually what they need. So,
right. Yeah.
which
You could-
is great.
and Aristotle,
Yeah.
Socrates, know thyself.
Right.
I discovered from that I was not the mechanical engineer, doctor mentality. If you're in the, I can't do it in Myers-Briggs, but in DISC,
Yeah.
that's the C.
That's my
strong.
wife. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like rules and I like,
Yep.
detail. Oh, that's my wife too.
The beaver. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
That's we get along. We get along so well.
I know.
I'm a big picture.
You're a big eye. You're a big eye.
The ENTJ in the room.
Yeah, I don't speak that language, but I know those words. But yeah, I was a big eye. I could work well with people, and I value people, and I liked exciting concepts.
Yep.
And so
And translating them and making them, and then saying, yes, these people can do it.
this person can do it, and
Right.
that person can manage it, and we will all die, but the project will get done. But this guy is going to give us a hug and pick us up off the floor.
Exactly.
And God needs us all.
Yes,
and
exactly.
so do we. We need them all. Anyhow.
Yep.
So,
So you realized that about yourself.
I realized that, and at the same time, I met this woman who just had everything, figured out in life, and she was going to be, she was running 5 miles a day with snake eaters.
Yeah.
This is my wife Jane up in Monterey.
Right.
Army officer jumping out of, I can't tell you this part, but she was featured in a magazine when women were just early on being accepted into jump school to be airborne. And, so she's in this magazine, the picture of her doing a push-up or something. And so she, So
naturally, you're going to hitch your wagon to that, of course.
Well, I didn't realize
fool
that.
way.
Yeah. Well, all I realized was, man, and this is an illustration of, the bride you marry is not the woman you live with,
Mm-hmm.
And I heard this first from Ashley Boyd, my daughter-in-law, who was talking to my daughters saying, hey, the guy you marry turns out not to be the same guy you live with. We all put on our best face.
Oh, of course.
But, I didn't see paragraph 2. I didn't have it. I didn't talk to my parents saying, what do you think about this? Does this, is this how this is really working? All I knew was I had found someone who was pretty sharp and put up with me. That was a big,
big thing.
That was like criteria 2 through 12.
Yeah.
And we just have done well for these many weeks.
Many weeks.
Yes.
So you realized you
I
had
got
to get out of
married.
that cubicle.
I got married, and before I got married, I realized, okay, I can't quite do this thing, but they trained me to do this skill.
Yeah.
And a headhunter came along and said, hey, would you like to do this, this software, same hardware, it's a supply company, blah, blah, blah. And so I started into this job, and then I went off to get married, and I came home. There was some bobbling and turbulence in between there with my jobs, because I went from original replacement job to a new replacement job, and I came back from my honeymoon, and the new most recent replacement job was, oh, yeah, our company's about to close. You're going to have to get another job.
Yeah. But
Anyhow,
you learned all that about yourself.
So all these things, I'm learning all along, and what's this about stocks? What's this about, buy low, sell high?
Oh, shoot, I've been doing it wrong.
I know, but if you make it up in volume, you can make it work.
Yeah.
Buy high, sell low. Make it up in volume.
Yeah.
And I would read these things about options, and I would think, what is that, you know. And then I would learn what an option is in really real estate, you
Yeah.
know. Oh,
Yeah.
it's a contract to do a specific thing at a certain time, at a
Right.
certain price,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. So fast forward to the early 2000s, my kids are in Christian school out in Virginia, Fredericksburg area, down near Quantico, Virginia. And I had been working at Home Depot as previously, see previous podcast, and had left Home Depot to be further south in Fredericksburg. And my kids are going to this school, and I think, well, I know a lot about, you know, just building and all these things. So I went to work for the Christian school system. They had several elementary schools in churches primarily, one standalone and a middle school and one high school, and they had plans of expanding that and building a second one. And, you know, so this was a pretty, you know, and so they needed a director of maintenance,
Okay.
director of facilities, you know, and I had kind of the maintenance and
Management and
you know,
operation, project
all
management
those
stuff. Yeah.
operations. So I did all these things for several years, and I got to be a coach on the sidelines. You know, not paid, but I would help the coaches.
yeah.
You know, so I helped one coach with softball, and I got to watch my kids do all the sports. So soccer and volleyball and basketball, and
Yeah.
then softball. Softball and cross country were the only two that I really had any kind of involvement as a coach, you know. So
Yeah.
anyhow, so I had a really great time. Through that, I met a guy named Dave Schley, and all of you old people out there remember the original Odd Couple television with Tony Curtis and the other guy. So in the Odd Couple, Felix is the meticulous, detail-oriented guy,
Right.
and the other guy was a sports writer or caster or something. You know, very sloppy. Everybody loved him, but he smoked cigars and everything. Well, that was Dave and I. Dave was Felix. You know, he made the things run on time. He knew how to pick locks. He knew how to, wire houses. And I knew how to drive a wheelbarrow without spilling concrete,
that's an
and
important
dig
skill.
ditches,
Yeah.
And all the guys loved me, and we took our marching orders from Dave.
Yeah.
So we were and still are the Odd Couple. Later in life, Dave says, you married me.
Okay.
I said, you better have another beer because I don't think that meant, I don't think that came out the way you meant it. He said, no. My wife is just like Jane. You are like my wife. I am just like Jane. You married me.
Interesting.
And I said, still, let's just find another way to say that I'm a lot like your wife and you are a lot like my wife.
Great.
I said, okay.
That makes more sense.
Well, it certainly goes over better at church.
It goes over better. That's true. So you
Yikes. So we get into business thinking that we're going to buy houses and flip them,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the real estate game goes belly up in 2008.
Yeah.
And we can't figure out how to buy these houses from banks because they're thinking, are you kidding? We're keeping all these houses until this thing turns around.
Right.
You know? So we started breaking into people's houses and taking things.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is live. This is a recorded podcast.
Oh, folks. Oh, yeah, right.
I should have prefaced the statement of this that you are being recorded for quality and training purposes.
Yeah. So when we found out we couldn't buy houses and flip them, that would be several years down the road.
Right.
we started foreclosing houses for the banks.
Mm,
So a bank, maybe in California, would hire a management company
right.
out in this case, one of the big ones was right there in Denver. And they would hire asset preservation contractors.
Oh, yeah.
So we would go and break into houses.
Okay.
Sometimes it just meant opening the door
Yeah.
or crawling through one of the busted out windows.
Well, he's the one that can
Clean
pick
out-
locks, right?
Well,
That's
yes,
good.
that's where that came from. Clean out, the house, take
Sure.
it to the dump or whatever, and sometimes do repairs, sometimes not. It just depended on the bank's
Yeah.
risk tolerance and that kind of stuff. But I get a lot more people listening when I say I break into. But that was it.
Yeah.
We would break into houses. I remember one. We broke into a townhouse.
This is Denver? This is
No, this
California.
this is Northern Virginia.
Oh, Virginia.
yeah,
Okay.
Northern Virginia.
You broke into
And we
one.
broke into which breaking in means we have to change the locks.
Right. Okay.
So, we drill out the lock, we take it off, we open the door, and everything is immaculate.
Oh.
There's a hallway with a coat rack with 3 little backpacks and 4 little pairs of boots
Oh,
and
no.
shoes. What is your thought?
Oh my! Somebody's still living there full time, and you got the wrong house.
No. Yeah, we knew we had the right house.
Okay.
Someone was living there and didn't know that their landlord was not paying their mortgage.
Oh no!
And we experienced this, and about a year later, it's on 60 Minutes.
Really?
Landlords are not paying their mortgage.
Yeah. And the
people-
tenants are getting the
Yeah.
short end of the stick.
But now we are like fiduciary agents of the banks.
Right.
So we can't tell the people. So we put the new lock on. We give a key to the person next door and say, these guys are going to come home and not be able to get in their house. Give them this key.
Yeah.
We can't tell you why. And that was all we could say.
Oh, that's awful.
We couldn't even say they better start looking to move because their landlord is,
Yeah.
But the truth is, even at that, and there's probably lots and lots of documented stories, there were people that the banks let them stay in the house because maybe they built the house or what. It was
Yeah.
$1 million house,
Yeah.
and they were taking better care of it than if it was empty
Sure. Sure.
and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so
Just cutting deals.
it
to make
was
sure it
just,
stayed. Yeah.
yeah, it was a Wild West
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. Anyhow, so, here's my experience to maybe the wrong side of real estate, how it can go bad.
Right.
And even Dave Ramsey talks about, and I think it was about this time, where he had lots of real estate, and it took him down,
Yeah.
you know, and that's how he got into financial counseling and such.
Mm.
So we were seeing it, So then my wife, who was working for then Lockheed Martin after having gotten out of the Army, but still knowing a lot about satellites and communications, ends up in Lockheed Martin. And she's traveling a lot to Silicon Valley and Denver and other places. And it just her travel schedule got really weird. And so we said, what if we ask Lockheed if we can move you to either Denver or Silicon Valley, and at least you'd see me half the time because I'm
Right.
here one of these two places generally. And so thankfully, we were very happy to be in Denver, but Lockheed said, well, come to Denver. Who wants to go to California? And I said, yes.
Because you guys wanted to go there.
Well, Silicon Valley, I was looking at houses, $750,000, for a house built in 1960, and it's a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and it just
Yeah. Not the same. as
everything
the
was
Denver market.
very old,
Yeah.
and now it would be relatively close to the ocean, which I like water, but Denver was like, oh, houses are reasonable. Their whole housing market is half the price of California.
Right.
And so let's try that one. And so we went to Denver. And so we're rolling into Denver, and now I no longer have Dave to run a company that I could just,
Sure,
run
yeah.
people with.
Right.
And there were a couple other things, and we thought, well, let's try the other side of this coin. So we bought a foreclosed property.
Mm.
And the first two that we bought, Jane had some money, Oh, by the way, here, how our relationship goes is she has all the money, I have all the debts. So
At least that's what you tell your lawyers in the probate court. And
that's right. That's right.
trustee.
I don't have anything to take, so you really want to talk to her.
Yeah. Spelled out that way in your will.
Yeah,
For the kids.
And to be honest, anyhow, it just worked out. So we ended up buying, the very first thing was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse that really, I went in there and I thought, okay, we'll paint this. I'm going to change the linoleum at the entryway to ceramic, and we should change the carpet. It was really,
straightforward, yeah.
pretty straightforward. The first two were HUD homes.
Okay. Yeah.
So, we got very good deals. And of course, we're coming in with the intention of buying the whole thing,
Yeah.
no mortgage. And so this was fun. We started buying and renting, renovating, renting real estate. And it started with one and it started with two. Then it got a couple of condos. And then, and so I'm learning. And actually in Virginia, I had done the initial stuff with Robert Kiyosaki, learning about these things. And that's where I bought the game.
Mm-hmm.
And so one Christmas break when Gabrielle came home from college and, all the siblings are in high school, we played that game twice a day. So we spent, 4 hours a day in financial
training.
And
Fun.
I knew I was in trouble when we're in the grocery store and I stop at the magazine rack to look at Road and Track. And Lauren says, "Hey, is that a doodad?" Which is the code word for a waste of your money.
Right.
And I said, "Yes, I'm not going to buy it. I'm only browsing." But Lauren, as I know that you're not surprised, was keep your feet to the fire. We've been playing this game. We know the way to go, So, and it turned out well because all, 3 of the 4 bought houses and rented them. Mm-hmm. The majority of them lived. Jessica made a little cubby hole in the basement, so she could rent out all 3 bedrooms.
Yeah. Some people just go to the extremes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm going to live in the garage and that cubby hole. Yeah, I could rent that out. Thing too.
Yeah. Well, so that's a good segue spot into the next part of this topic is now you've got kids. You're learning this. You didn't come from immaculate wealth. You didn't come from a father or mother who were
I think
particularly
minuscule wealth is the word you're...
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You didn't come from that. You didn't come from you weren't inheriting wealth. No. You didn't come from a father or mother who had trained you in this your whole life. No. You kind of been doing this on your own. Mm-hmm. But then you now have 4 kids who you've then trained. And so I want to shift the conversation now into, especially along the lines of your personality as a coach. You're learning this. How did you teach this to your kids and and now your grandkids? How are you teaching? How did you and how are you? And a lot of that sounds like, from the game and just doing it yourself and them getting to witness you through that is probably a lot, but yeah.
So you've touched on kind of 3 things. As I looked back, at a certain point, I looked back at, how I went down rabbit trails, trying to find my way. I thought the thing I want to give to my kids and my grandkids is long range, over the horizon view, which no longer translates, with all these satellites and stuff. Oh, I can see around the world. Look, there's what's going on in Indonesia, you know. But in the old days,
Still
they
over
would,
the horizon.
yeah, they would send a scout party
Yeah.
way far ahead, and
Yeah.
then with fires or smoke or whatever, they'd let them know, go the other way.
Right.
I have a farther view having come from places. Now, all of my kids are very strong-willed and they go their way,
Yeah.
but at least they know I'm looking way down the line.
Yeah.
Then as far as teaching goes, I am let's have fun. Well,
You're an
there-
otter? Is that what that is?
that is exactly what I am, a river otter, and so we would do stuff and they would get experiences, and especially if I'm having fun, they're going to do it more often.
Yeah, yeah.
And there is an old saying that is in the area of values are caught more than taught.
Mm.
And I think this is kind of that way. Now, so fast forward a little bit, we're doing all this real estate. There comes a time now we're moving towards retirement, although it's an active retirement, but I want less management in my real estate. And
Right.
so we're moving our real estate assets into a low management format called a DST, Delaware Statutory Trust, if you want to look it up. And I'm thinking, well, I still, if we go to California or Virginia or Florida, or we've never said let's go to Wisconsin, but what can I do? I don't want to just sit around.
Yeah.
And so then I started learning about stocks. I had tried to do, like be a real estate agent,
Yeah.
which I love taking people, to houses and showing them and doing that stuff. But it's very hard to do when you're in Key West,
Right, right.
and you don't have a son
Right.
who's in the, and I thought, okay, this is not working the way. Oh, and the two people that I thought of my four kids that are kind of more business oriented, they said, real estate, I don't want anything to, and your houses, we don't want these houses. I thought, okay, all right, curveball. I fouled it off, but we got to be prepared for a different pitch.
Right.
So it works out. But so then I learned more about stocks, and buy and hold, value, income. There's lots of ways to look at stocks.
Mm-hmm.
They're really just a commodity, an asset. Some are better than others.
Yeah.
Day-old lettuce is not as valuable as, something else. So the game was the same. It's just the field had changed.
And it's something you're interested in because primarily you can do it independent of geographic.
Yes, that was
locale.
the initial, well, let's investigate this because, with computerization, we can, and the computers are teeny tiny. I can do it. And some people can even do it on their phone if they have really good eyesight.
Right.
And so, in that particular case, I started one direction. I had read things. About buying good stocks, writing covered calls, which adds cash flow to the hopeful appreciation, and dividends.
Yeah.
So it really started with my grandson, Levi. I bought him, 100 shares of Travelers Insurance, and
Okay.
I was writing. Wait. I was dabbling at trying to figure out how do you write these covered calls and what do you.
Yeah, you're not just buying shares and holding
Well, I
it for
did.
a couple days or
Oh,
a
no,
week
no,
or whatever.
no.
You're
I-
doing covered call. You're actually
I had those
engaged in
shares
this. Yeah.
for in his his account for several years, and I didn't even pay really attention to them other than to know this is the value I want to write this covered call. So, in a nutshell, options are contracts. One person is selling a privilege, and if I'm selling a covered call to someone else, I'm giving them the privilege to take an action at a specific date on a specific asset, in this case, traveler's insurance, if it gets to or above, in the case of a call, a certain strike price. So if travelers is $100 a share, I might write a covered call for $120 2 months out, and they would pay me for that contract of $1 a share. And if on that date, 2 months out, if it was at 120 or above, they could, if they choose, to exercise that option. It is just a contract.
And
but the contract has a value.
And what's the risk to you if they don't?
If
or the time?
If the criteria of the contract, either it doesn't get to the price, that would be the one that's most pertinent in this illustration. If it doesn't get to 120, if it gets to 119.99, then the contract has not been fulfilled, and they cannot exercise
yeah.
Yeah. So if they were to exercise it, then I must sell. So the seller has the obligation, the buyer has the right.
Right.
Which they can or are not required to exercise. So the risk is this $100 share, 100 shares.
Shares.
Every contract is 100 shares. So these 100 shares of Travelers that I bought at 90 or some low price, and I've sold possibly on this day at 120, now I no longer have that share.
Sure.
Those shares. Now, if it works the way you want it to work, you may do this several times and you've gotten premium like rent. And in the end, you sold the house, Travelers, for more than you bought it for. And so you've gotten appreciation plus rent, and you turn around and buy another house, Tesla or AMD or,
And you're taxed on the gain?
Yeah, so it's all, you're taxed
on
two different ways.
Okay.
In this particular illustration, you would be taxed at capital gains rate on the increase if you've had the stock for a year or more.
Right.
If
not, it's counted towards your income tax if it's less than a year, like traditional stocks.
No, it's just not considered capital gains. It's short-term gains.
Right.
Capital gains, traditionally, when they say capital gains, they're talking about long-term
Longer
gains.
than a year. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you have a more beneficial tax rate on long-term gains as opposed to short-term gains. Right. And premium, the rental aspect of the option is considered just income, not W-2.
Yeah,
but it's just income.
Taxed that way.
It is taxed as regular income, but in most ways. Now there are some exceptions, but
yeah. So you started this with Levi, and so, I mean you started the interest of it because you're it's independent of my location. This sounds like a great deal. Let's do this. Or something to at least explore. Okay, now I'm going to use my first grandchild, or no, he's not your first
he's first of everything.
I'm going to use my first grandchild as
first
the guinea
grandchild,
pig.
First grandson. Not that I distinguish between the two, between male and female, but I mean he is the.
So he's your guinea pig for testing.
As every other grandchild will know in the future. How come he gets everything?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why.
That's why. Every firstborn knows at a certain point, oh, what do you mean I get everything? Oh, Mom loves you way more than she loves me. Really?
Well,
I know, we can laugh about it, but because it's just you and me.
yeah, of course. Nobody else will ever hear this. So you're testing this out on him. You're doing the stocks, the options now, and now this is obviously years ago. You're doing a lot more of this now and regularly.
Yeah.
And you've you've taught this to Richard as well. And
Oh, Richard is way ahead of me.
He's teaching you.
Oh, yeah. And Richard is in a different environment. He has different needs.
Right.
So his criteria is different.
Right.
And I should back up. Options are not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things you learn in any kind of investing is you have to know your risk tolerance.
Sure.
And when you're a married couple, the risk tolerance of the family is a third item.
Right.
It is a blend of the two risk tolerances.
Right.
So I'll just back up. So the story about real estate, we kind of, the very first one, the 2-bedroom, 2-bath townhouse, we bought because Jane came home one day and said, they're talking about a drawdown, which in the military means you're getting fired. They're looking at shrinking management, and I've only been there a couple years, and I don't know whether I'm a target or not. And we had bought a house, and so I'm thinking, well, I don't make any money, dear, how, and I said, but I had just gone through this class, my second class, which, by the way, sorry, another aside, there is the saying that what happens when you don't get what you thought you wanted in an experience or something, you get experience. So if you fall down and you get up again, assuming you get up, you're not starting back at step one, because now you have experience.
Yeah.
Don't pick up that grenade. It does not look like, it looks like a pine cone, but it is not a pine cone. You go a little bit differently. You've learned something. You're not starting over at step one.
Right.
So we thought, okay, or maybe I presented the case that, listen, if we lose our income and we lose this house we like to live in, we would still have this thing that we are going to buy as a rental. It'll be free and clear. They can't take that from us.
Right.
And we could fit,
Yeah, if we had to. Yeah.
If we had to, And so that one was hard.
Yeah.
The next one was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, single family with a yard, same thing. I ended up only doing it had a funky wooden patio that came out of the glass, the sliding glass door, but you had to, but the door from the garage also came to that wooden patio, and you had to step up, and bang your head on the top of the doorway. And I thought, I'm only 6 foot, so there's a lot of people this doesn't fit for. So I took that out and did a cement patio.
But it was very basic.
Oh, it was very
too.
basic,
Yeah.
and it was in great condition. Another HUD home,
Yeah.
So Jane said, and
You're
we
pretty
got
good at this.
No, she didn't say that.
Okay.
She did not say that. But she said, oh, this isn't as scary. Now, the 2 gals that rented the townhouse stayed there for 6 years.
Nice.
Yeah. And the guy who rented the house, single family, he's still there 10 years later.
Yeah.
Taking a 2-year lease every year.
Right.
And so it was like, oh, we should look for some more. And so we bought this, then we bought that, and we found a real estate agent that was really investment oriented, and he did not think like a retail real estate agent.
Good.
And he says, oh, it might be time for you to look at a property in the mountains, up in ski country.
Mm.
So we looked at one and we bought it, and we looked at another one, we bought it. And Jane said, "What else is out there, Todd?" I'm there. Okay, here we go. And it was just wow.
Yeah.
So risk tolerance. If you can take that first step, it's a lot like the first day you go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
You start building muscle. Your risk tolerance is like building now, we also learned know your exit plan.
Yeah.
Okay, and we learned this from a house we built in Virginia. We would take the kids walking in the woods, and they thought they were just running around and throwing stones and breaking sticks and we were looking for property, and we found a property, and we thought, well, okay, what's the next step? Oh, we should put in an offer. Okay, we bought it. We can always sell it and probably get about what we got it for.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the next thing? Well, we should probably come up with some plans.
Yeah.
So then we went through, a year of going to the library every week, and we were getting plans, books, and Jane was Xeroxing pages. And, the kids, oh, man, we're learning a lot. We're renting books, and and then it was, okay, we had the plans. What would be the next thing? Well, we should look into a loan to permanent lender, find a lender that does a construction loan that converts to permanent loan and blah, blah. Okay, we've done that, and all of a sudden we're breaking ground on a house, and built a house. And so that was where we learned, hey, know what your exit strategy is, you know? And so you buy a stock, and okay, I'm going to try and do this. If it goes down, I'll let it go down this percentage. This is what I'm comfortable with, and then I'll admit I made a mistake, or, and so your option within options, what your available exit plans are.
Right.
And it makes it easier to take risk.
And that risk, as you mentioned, is the third part if you're married, like you and Jane, like Rich
so
and
at the
Ashley
beginning, it was like, I'm big picture in it, and Jane's saying, well, hold it. What's the HOA? What's the insurance? What are the taxes? And I thought, okay, I can make a spreadsheet and do this,
right.
And then, like 5 years later, I learned about an organization called, I think it's Deeper Pockets or something like that. And they're teaching all this stuff, where I'm writing it down on a napkin at dinner thinking, okay, I need to know this. I need to know this.
Yeah.
And, I ought to know, how do I figure out, what does a 3-bedroom, 2-bath rent for in this area? Here's the zip code. I know that. And I can look on Craigslist, and I can look on, rental applications. So I know this thing's going to rent for $1,200 to $1,300, and I don't have a management company, so I'm keeping it all. All I have to do is change toilets and put in light bulbs and things when people call and things like that. And I do that at the beginning, and then I get old and I think, 10%, that's not much to pay to get someone else to do that.
To call them in the middle of the night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something to consider as you're married. And so so now you're teaching your kids this stuff. You're teaching Rich, you're teaching, and they've obviously, like you mentioned, they've got a great handle on it. They're in a different environment, as you mentioned. But obviously Lauren as well. She's the one that got me into Dave Ramsey. We were driving to visit you, actually, you guys, for, I don't remember, it was New Year's or Christmas or something, and we were coming out from here, and she gave me the whole CD case of the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University. So we did that, and Jess, as you mentioned, she's comfortable living in a closet. We're renting the closet out.
Yeah.
And Gabe has always been that way. So this is, a lot of it is you learning it yourself and bringing your kids with you, which is discipleship 101. But a lot of it, there's intentionality there. How did that look? Outside of the games, the games that you would play twice a day, the financial
Well,
games.
the game, Cash Flow 101, it really solidified the idea that you can buy any asset, gold, a car, a stock, a house, and just ride it hoping that it goes up,
Mm-hmm.
which has been crazy these past 40 years.
Yeah.
The market has generally been going up. Real estate generally has been going up.
Right.
Gold has gone up.
Mm-hmm.
Silver is still lagging, but it's the redheaded stepchild. um, you know, so they understood that what you really want to know is, can this generate some cash flow so I don't have to worry about the mortgage,
Right.
so that I don't have to worry about the taxes and insurance.
So it made it fun and not just
So
easy to understand, but a
it,
concept that was fun,
yes,
and they got on board with it.
yeah. And so when they saw us buying rentals, they said, "Oh, this is just like in the game."
Yeah. You're not
Lauren,
just preaching it
yeah,
at us, you're doing
right.
it also. And yeah.
Lauren was the first to do it. She bought a house there in Denver, and it was a 4 or 5 bedroom, and she had 1 bedroom, and she rented out 3 or 4 others to people, and and she lived there, which was good because that helped. But she kept that even when she moved away,
Yeah.
and she managed it from afar, and I kept an eye on the lawn and, some repairs and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And so if I can switch to another thing that I learned early on about sailing, I was at a boat show one time and I said, "How do you know if you want a boat with a wheel or a tiller?" He says, "Well, you don't know you wanted a tiller till you bought a boat with a wheel."
Oh.
There is some truth to, there are things that you just don't know until you are in the experience. There's things about your new job that you won't be able to anticipate until you get there and you're trying to program and you discover, I don't sit still very long looking at computer.
Right. Right.
You don't know what it's like to be the guy in the left seat until you are the guy in the left seat,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just learned these concepts, at various times. When the student is ready, the truth will appear.
Master.
And I try and tell, counsel people, you don't know what it's like to manage property until you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ha 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 ha. Funny story. So we have these 2 properties in the mountains, and it's ski country, and I knew that we could make more money if we did it short-term rentals, but
Yeah.
I didn't have that mentality.
Yeah.
And Jane retired from Lockheed and said, "Okay," for those of you who can't see, she slaps her hands together and rubs them and says, "I can help you now with all your real estate." And I said, "Well, there's a lot to be said for learning by doing. So why don't you manage these 2 in the mountains?" And at the same time, our kids, who knew we still weren't doing all this stuff right, they said, they were having breakfast together at Thanksgiving, and they said, "Okay, let's divvy up these 2 important things that need to happen. Who wants to teach these guys how to have a budget?" Lauren said, "I can make that happen." "Who wants to help them manage these properties in the mountains?" And Jessica said, "Well, I can get them on Airbnb, but that's all I'm going to do. I'll keep them alive, but that's
Yeah.
it. And so, that fell into place just as Jane wanted management, and she ran 2 ski rental and summer rental Airbnbs in the mountains and learned a ton.
Yeah.
And so people were paying our mortgage and our HOA and all that up there, and mountain property was going crazy. And so at the right time, when Jane was tired of that, which I can't blame her, they had appreciated. And so we sold them, and we put that money into something new, because now we're thinking we don't really want to manage property.
Right.
That's where we discovered the Delaware,
DST.
yes, Delaware Statutory Trust.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Ana Vivo podcast. We welcome your feedback and ideas. You can learn more about us by simply Googling the word Ana Vivo. This podcast is supported by listeners like you. I am a licensed real estate broker with Compass Real Estate and a nationwide real estate matchmaker. We consult with you for free, find and vet the right real estate professional that specializes in the area and niche you need, are paid by that professional, and they get clients like yourself who want and need their unique specialty or winning track record. If you or someone you know is in the market to buy or sell real estate anywhere in the U.S., don't simply web search the highest paying advertiser. Let us use our licensed experience to find and vet the real and best professional for you. It costs you nothing but a phone call or email with me, and has saved my clients financially and emotionally. I'd be honored to serve, and you can reach me direct by email at tim.c.miller@outlook.com. And as always, to God be the glory.